Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On our True Adventure series, Mrs. Constance Helmrichs of Tucson, Arizona, showed us the actual films of how she and her husband carved out a world of their own in the icy wilderness of northern Alaska. They learned many of the techniques of survival from the Eskimos, with whom they lived on the shores of the Arctic Ocean 200 miles east of Point Barrow. Tonight, Mrs. Helmrichs returns to our series with a captivating True Adventure sequel, We Lived with the Eskimos.
Bold Journey, your television passport to the exciting, colorful world of it. Here to begin tonight's true story adventure is Jack Douglas.
When they left the warm and sheltered climate of Arizona for the icy regions north of the Arctic Circle, Constance and Harmon Helmrichs sought out the Eskimos. For these ingenious people held the key to survival in the far north, the age-old techniques of getting both food and fuel from the ice-choked Arctic Ocean. These friendly people literally adopted the Helmrichs, taught them to hunt seal and polar bear, to find drinking water in old ice floes far out in the ocean, and to fashion robes and clothes from caribou skins. Now, it was this knowledge which helped the Helmrichs survive on the shores of the Arctic Ocean, and later when they decided to live alone in the Alaskan wilderness. It's my great pleasure now to welcome Mrs. Helmrichs for her second appearance on our True Adventure series with the actual movies of her life with the Eskimos. Hi, Mrs. Helmrichs. Welcome back to our program series.
Thank you, Jack.
Now, Life magazine here, in this wonderful issue, you made the cover and, of course, all kinds of pictures inside, called you the very first woman to explore the Colville River. Is that where you found this particular band of Eskimos that you were to live with?
Yes, they were living at the mouth of the river, right at the Arctic Ocean.
Uh-huh. How many Eskimos were in this particular group?
There was just one family in this group, but around 250 people live in an area of 45,000 square miles in that region.
They're not pushed around any up there, are they?
They have plenty of elbow room.
I should say. Now, do you or your husband speak the Eskimo language? How are you able to get along with them?
We couldn't speak Eskimo when we first went among these people.
Uh-huh.
But they have learned to speak a little English.
Now, how are we going to get into this wild region?
Jack, we're flying over the Brooks Range in Arctic Alaska. We'll go 300 miles non-stop from our cabin to where the Eskimos live, on the edge of the polar basin. There's nothing but white peaks rising 8,800 feet into the air.
Is there any time of the year, Mrs. Helmrichs, when these mountains are not as snow-clad and foreboding as they seem here?
Jack, there are snows on the peaks of the mountains in the middle of the summer, but for the most part, the snow melts completely away from the valleys. We have reached the Eskimos at the delta of the Colville River on the north coast of Alaska. We're going to make a landing now on skis. You have to gauge the ground by watching the dog team that's tied. That's the only landmark. It's a ticklish business because it's very rough. We can't see much what we're doing. Oh, there's a bump. And finally, here we are. The Eskimos greet us with a great deal of delight. Ulak is 14 years old, a young man. He has grown a long time since we have seen him. His father and his sister greet us with big smiles. Always we have to watch out for windstorms in this part of the world. Violent winds up to 135 miles an hour may carry the airplane away and destroy it. Therefore, the first thing to do when we land is to tie our airplane. You tramp snow down onto these toggles, and it becomes frozen into iron. It's 30 below zero, approximately, in the month of April at the time of our arrival. We're right on the very edge of the continent now. A nice day dawns, and Ulak will go out to gather some driftwood for fuel. Icing the sled runners. He puts water on them with a caribou rag, and the sled will pull easily for the dogs.
You mean it freezes, the water freezes over and forms an ice on the runner, is that it?
It forms an ice film.
Uh-huh.
He hitches up his dogs with a caribou skin harness. He'll have to watch out that the dogs don't turn around and start to eat that harness up because they're always hungry. They're an odd assortment of dogs of all breeds. Nobody knows what.
Are these stories of the savageness of these dogs really true when they're out on the trail?
That's true. Any dog can become savage by the treatment that he receives in the Arctic. Ulak is only 14 years old, but he plays a man's part in the subsistence of his family in the most hostile part of the world. Over the roof of the house he goes. It's snowed under, you can see. His little sister, Lydia, likes to slide down the roof of the house where a drift has collected all winter long. She doesn't have a sled. She slides on her caribou skin boots and on her parka. Out of the gray, misty day come visitors. They have traveled 250 miles from Point Barrow, a family. A woman with a little baby under her parka, a small child by the hand, and a husband, and he shakes hands with everyone in great ceremony. But Kaliak, his name was, died very soon after this picture was taken because he caught a cold.
And that was sufficient to kill him?
A common cold did that. Sometimes we have been scouting the ice near our camp with our airplane, and we're going to warm it up today to see what we can find. The engine has frozen solid. We put a blanket over the cowling and build a fire underneath. Meanwhile, Ulak has returned. The people get wood to burn for their stoves in this region of the world by collecting it from the beaches. It's driftwood. The Eskimos don't gather wood the way a white man would. They don't put in wood for the winter or wood for months ahead. They simply get it by the day. After an hour of fire potting the airplane, as we pilots call it up north, the instruments inside the cockpit show that it is ready to fly. Many are the times that I've warmed the oil for that airplane on my stove inside the igloo and then poured in the warm oil to prepare the ship. Bud turns over the propeller gingerly and climbs in. He's going to go out and scout the ice for miles around to see what the prospects are of game for the starving family. Over the rough snow he goes, bouncing on his skis. The landing gear is brittle in these low temperatures, and if you break your landing gear, you are more than 500 miles from the nearest source of repairs. We have painted the wingtips and the tail of the airplane in a bright color so that it can be found if we're ever lost.
Is that the sailboat out there?
These Eskimos are traveling under full sail with a sled. They are using a big sled and a sail to help their dogs pull along. With the wind behind them, they can make real mileage on a day such as this. The people bring their tent along with them, and they can make a camp even in this kind of weather. The dogs will not freeze. They sleep in the snow and soon become drifted over. Sometimes we make a large snow house, especially for sheltering the dogs out of the wind. But in the spring of the year, the temperature now is not lower than around 0. A typical gray day in the Arctic world. We go out and light this flare in hopes that Bud will be able to find his way back to our camp again. After all, it's only a small pinpoint of humanity in a vast world of white, perhaps 45,000 square miles, and he must find us. I go out to bring him in. When we hear the motor drone in the sky, he sees the flare, and down he comes safely at last, after many circlings. Many are the days like this when you can see only a few feet away and the person appears like a vision out of the fog. These furs that we wear were made for us by these Eskimo people entirely of the caribou skins. We have both an inside layer and an outside layer, fur pants and fur stockings. We laid down there on the snow in order to take a little rest when we had been working and panting, dragging the airplane around. During a nice day in spring, such as this, the Eskimos have decided that they will build a new dog sled because the old sled has become beaten up from much travel. Every family needs 2 or 3 sleds, such as we need 2 or 3 cars to get around. Even the children help, carrying shavings for the fire. The lumber was brought in on small trading vessels once in a year. The sled is bound together with rawhide made of the seal. The first bird has arrived from the south, meanwhile, a little snow bunting. He gets busy picking up tiny bits of meat from the snow. If you'll look inside the cowling of the airplane now, you'll see two small birds. They're swallows. The poor birds had mistakenly come north before any food was in the north for them, and they starved to death and froze.
Oh, no.
Gasoline for our airplane has been collected by the Eskimos from a raft of drums that broke loose from the Navy in the Arctic Ocean a few seasons ago. We have to gas the plane by hand. Out to the polar ice, we're going 100 miles north of shore now. In the spring of the year, the Eskimos commonly go out onto the polar ice to hunt seals. So we have taken our airplane out here, and we're going to hunt this year with them. After all, we are like members of the family here. It's very tricky landing out here, Jack. Very dangerous.
I think even that is an understatement.
You see, there are cracks in this ice and many hummocks where it has frozen unevenly, and if you stick a ski into one of those, over you flip. We have brought our tent toggles along with us from the shore, and we're tying the tent to the snow by tramping them down. In the severe winter months, of course, we would put snow blocks around the tent, but that won't be necessary now that spring is coming on, and we're clothed, of course, entirely in the caribou furs. This is a very lightweight little tent. We had to economize on account of the airplane would not carry much of a load, and our equipment is of the simple sort that a sheep herder or a cowboy might use in the West. Nothing fancy or special about it. It's all in knowing how to use it. We have with us only a 5-pound sack of cornmeal and a little tea. I have a pressure cooker. That's one luxury I have and I enjoy very much. We're going to live off the polar ice during the spring weeks, hunting for our living. Arctic Ocean ice upon which we've made our camp is 9 feet thick on the level. But the thing that happens is that great storms blow and push this ice around as though it were cubes of sugar on a table until hummocks are reached that are perhaps 70 feet high into the sky. We've camped purposely near one of these ice ridges in order to have a lookout for hunting. We will have to use binoculars to find game in this vast area of the world. There are 3 million square miles of ice stretching between us over the North Pole and the nearest country. We see coming from shore our friend Apiak driving his dogs. The dogs are fed a little bit of meat that we brought from shore, but we don't have much to go on. There's a definite limit to what they can pull on the sled to get out this far, and they're going to have to hunt for their living now that they're here.
I noticed he wasn't getting very close to the dogs. He seemed to be just throwing it to them with a stick of some sort, and they're on a chain, too.
They are chained so that they won't fight and cripple each other. If your dog team gets injured, then you really are in trouble. You depend upon them for your life as a hunter.
Now, your friends, the Eskimos, came out to this camp. You and your husband flew out here, and then they joined you by dog sled days later, I'd assume.
That is correct. We will use both the airplane and dog sled to exist here. Sledding across the open plains of the frozen ocean is almost like being a pioneer on the desert in some ways. It's a white country with rocks of ice. The hunter, Bud, in this instance, is going to show us how he gets a seal. The seals have gnawed their way from the ocean out to the ice surface. He is creeping directly toward them, garbed all in white to simulate ice. He does not swerve from side to side when he approaches his animal, but comes in a straight-on line. He will have the sun at his back, if possible, so that the seal cannot see him. He will be downwind. The seals have a very keen hearing and a very keen sense of smell. He got him. The dogs are hungry and they make a dive for the dead seal. They must be pulled away and separated from each other, or else pretty soon all 9 dogs will be a conglomeration, maybe with injuries that are serious.
Well, they're fighting there now.
Yes, the Eskimo breaks them up. You'll notice that the Eskimos don't use a whip. They do this all with the voice. and they seem to have very wonderful control over these half-wild dogs.
Well, from what we've seen of Eskimos universally, they don't seem to be a cruel people. They have to hunt to live, to survive, but they certainly aren't noted for any cruelty whatsoever. I don't ever recall having seen an instance of Eskimo cruelty toward wildlife of any kind. Have you?
That is right. They are a gentle people, gentle-spoken. They love their children, and they do the best they can in a harsh country. I'm coming in with a load of 9 seals, and I'm real proud of them. I'm so tired I can hardly walk. This is the end of the day's hunt, ending about midnight. It doesn't get dark at this season. It's in the spring, about the month of June. Each seal weighs about 180 pounds. They're covered with blubber.
And now these seals were to serve as food for your husband and yourself as well as the Eskimos back at camp.
Yes, we live on the same diet that the Eskimos do. In order to operate here, we're too far from any supplies. Now he's taking them to shore, where the people are very hungry. The dogs now will begin to get better meals. We are certainly glad to have food in camp. The dog pants are made out of gasoline tins.
And they're fed the same food, of course, seal in essence, I'd assume.
Yes, It's an all-meat diet for them and for us, boiled over the Primus stove.
Now he seems to be getting a little bit closer to the dogs.
Yes, the dogs are very content now. Back comes Bud after half a day has elapsed, and we're glad to see him out here on the ice, I and the Eskimo boys, because he might not get back for several days if bad weather should descend. Our usual working day is to awake around 11 o'clock in the morning. That's when the seals wake up and come from under the sea to sleep on top of the ice. Then, along about noon, as we call it, the middle of our hunting day, perhaps 4 in the afternoon, we have tea and biscuits. After a short snack and a rest, we resume our hunting for the rest of the hunting day, which lasts until 11 or 12 midnight. It's a severe existence, but one, Jack, in which you can go a long time between meals if you have to, because seal meat seems to be full of vitamins. I never felt stronger in my life than when I was living off the polar ice.
Really?
And that diet. Polar bear tracks, what we've been waiting for weeks, and it's a big fellow. He will be a real find if we can only secure him. Perhaps he'll weigh 1,000 pounds. The hunters watch with their binoculars, hoping to sight the bear. He puts a shell in, and he takes a rest. Bud got him, and here he is, one of the most prized animals of all and one of the most rare in the world. The polar bear is a sea animal, a marine animal that rarely comes to shore. He lives entirely off seals, not fish, in his wild state.
Well, this bear is going to mean a very valuable fur for these people, isn't it?
Yes, fur and meat. We'll eat the polar bear, too. All except the liver, I should add. That is poisonous to people and dogs alike because it seems to have too much vitamin A, and we have to destroy the liver and make sure that nobody gets hold of it. The boys have helped roll the bear onto the sled, and we'll push it to camp, because this bear was shot just a few yards from the door of the tent. In fact, he would have destroyed our tent and our dog team as well if he'd got mixed up with him. The bears are fearless. They don't know what a man is. One of the odd things, Jack, is that a seal once in a while will lose its breathing hole and not be able to get back into the ocean where he belongs.
That's a little baby, isn't it?
He's a partly grown seal, that's right, not quite old enough yet to know much.
He must have that water.
He must, because he'll freeze to death out there, exposed in the cold, and moreover, how could he eat? There's nothing to eat here for seals. He's digging hopelessly into the snow, hoping to find water. Well, we caught the little fellow and carried him to the nearest seal-breathing hole a mile or so from our camp, and there we let him go. Often the hunters have to cut their way with pickaxes to get through this kind of ice. You can see why the sleds are often battered and broken and why they must be bound with the seal rawhide. You can't use a nail in building a sled like this because it would tear apart. When the month of June has drawn to a close, it's time to leave the polar ice and get back to shore. We have warning all about us that it's going to melt soon. The seabirds have arrived. We can hear them singing. Here are ptarmigan, which the little girl is picking on land, and Nanny, the mother of the family, is sewing new sealskin boots for all of us hunters. It's time to change landing gear on the airplane. If we're going to go south, we must go by wheels because snow has melted from all over Alaska at this time. It's the month of early July. It's necessary to do all the work ourselves. Quite a tricky business. We will gas up for a last time and make a takeoff on wheels on the polar ice. Our Eskimo friends have worked for 2 days trying to shovel a runway through the deep snow, with the result that it has simply melted and made a terrible lake.
You really have to get out and get out fast, don't you, when that water appears particularly?
We certainly do. Everything is timed on the instant. This is one of the most terrible takeoffs I've ever made. But Bud is a wonderful flyer, and in the plane, his word is law. Heading south, we have crossed the Brooks Range once again, and we have come into Takahula Lake, our home. It's summertime in Alaska once again. The midnight sun circles the horizon, unsetting, and smiles down upon a beautiful Alaska.
Thank you much, Mrs. Helmrich. Mrs. Helmrich, what would you say is the most valuable lesson that you learned from these Eskimos with whom you lived?
Well, Jack, perhaps their philosophy of life, not to worry about tomorrow. Their way of life is relaxed, while we are a nervous and a tense people, and yet we don't have half the problems, really, that the Eskimos have.
Were these particular Eskimos with whom you lived Christianized? Have they felt the effect of the good missionaries?
Yes, 50 years before I ever came upon the scene, missionaries had gone there, and the Eskimos are very devout Christians. They carry a Bible with them wherever they go on the dog sled.
Well, now, with the airplane, I'm sure that must have been a powerfully intriguing factor. Were they constantly pestering you for a ride, perhaps?
No, they fully recognized the dangers of unnecessary takeoffs and landings, and they also recognized that gasoline was not unlimited in quantity in that part of the world.
Surely. Are you also a pilot, Mrs. Helmrich?
Truthfully, Jack, I don't have a pilot's license, although I have had over 3,000 hours in the cockpit, most of it north of the Arctic Circle.
Well, Mrs. Helmrich, it's a great deal of courage, a lot of skill, a tremendous frame of mind, I think, to partake in the adventures that you did in the Arctic. You've earned the admiration of everyone in our studio, both during your first appearance and again tonight. I want to thank you very, very much. You've given us a very thrilling, true story adventure. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.